Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. I promise you, we will talk about anime today, despite the fact that Elden Ring came out Friday, and that's, I think, all at least me and Iro and G have been doing in our spare time here. But,
I mean, honestly, the only reason I'm not playing it is because I plan to crib Iro's copy, and it would be very rude to play it while he's playing it. So
you need him to make the okay, yeah. So yes, and Zig as another someone who recently got into the Souls games, you'll be joining us soon enough, I'm sure. But
eventually, let's say
eventually. But yeah. That said, we did watch anime and have quite a other things to talk about, so we'll get to all that, and let's get into it. So to introduce everybody, I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet, although I've died many times in Elden Ring. But I keep picking myself back up.
In the real world, you're still with us. And G, we're joined by G.
Fuck Crucible Knight. All my homies hate Crucible Knight.
I don't think I've gotten there yet, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit behind you guys. But
we're
also joined.
Limgrave. He is in Limgrave, so
okay,
he is around there.
Maybe I haven't. Yeah, I've covered most of the first area, but I'm sure there's some things I still haven't done yet. But anyway, we're also joined by Zig.
Hello, I have obtained the most important part of the Elden Ring experience purely from Twitter, where I saw a screenshot of somebody who had dumped a corpse in the lap of another corpse and then left a bloodstained message that said, "Great head ahead." So, that's the authentic experience right
There's
there.
a lot of... I had forgotten how
seen...
fun it is to play a From game at launch with the online component, because Sekiro didn't have messages. So Sekiro was a much lonelier experience, but going into Elden Ring and just everybody just shit posting every 10 feet with online messages is an experience.
Yeah, mushroom.
Yes,
praise the mushroom. There's a lot of reoccurring ones.
Yeah,
those are the tame ones, but yeah.
Yes, a lot of butthole.
Yes, butthole
messages.
Some anything around a female
I've
character.
I've seen a lot of Fortnite.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Which made me laugh.
There have been, some of the stuff I've seen a fair amount of the old standby amazing chest ahead.
Yep,
so
yep, don't give up Skeleton, the classic.
Well, I mean, if we want to say a few brief words about our first impressions on Elden Ring, because that is a big deal.
I would say first impressions for me are positive.
Yeah, very. I'm really impressed by it.
Do you guys like the transition to the open world? It seems to be working.
I
guess Iro and me I guess we're the two who have probably played the most.
You're the veterans here.
You more than me, but I'm probably second place.
I think technically, you have probably technically beaten more From games than I have. Technically, because
yeah.
No, you didn't. Okay, I think I did. I did 1, 2, Sekiro.
Okay.
And I almost got to the end of Bloodborne. And then the DLC.
So I did 1, 3 Bloodborne, Sekiro.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
I mean the formula. The way the formula works, you play one, and you at least get the idea of what how the formula works. Not that the games are all the same, but
I think I was really impressed because. It's not that I was against the idea of an open world Dark Souls. In fact, I was very interested in it when it was first revealed. But I think there was definitely that trepidation at first of oh god, I don't really want Ubisoft towers in a
right.
Game. That's not really what I'm looking for. I don't want to have to climb towers to reveal portions of the map or whatever. I don't want to do racing mini games in Elden Ring.
Right.
I also think that part of the appeal of those earlier games is sort of the masochistic grinding against the critical path. There is only one way, and you have to get through it. Blood, sweat, and tears.
It creates a shared experience. Everybody knows Sense Fortress. Everybody remembers the Silver Knight Archers of Anor Londo, right? There are these specific bespoke experiences that are intrinsic to these games that are shared by a community because anybody who played those games had to do those things, right? And so an open world game potentially dilutes that. But I think just the conversations that Jel, Iro, and I have had about Elden Ring kind of bring a different but equally compelling formula to the game of like we're just having like really like divergent experiences, right? Like everybody.
Yeah, I mean that's been part
like,
of the fun talking about it has been, oh, I found this boss or whatever over here. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really cool. I think they've done a really good job of justifying the framework for this game.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think probably my favorite part of Souls games is often the like quietly, carefully exploring an environment, and now you are quietly and carefully exploring like everything, like the entire thing, as opposed to like you have to get through this castle to get to the next castle. It's like, here's this whole field that you can carefully explore and look at the weird stuff off in the corners.
Have any of you found the poisonous swamp yet? Because
there are
there's got to be
poisonous
one.
swamps.
Oh yeah.
There is poison. There's a whole portion of the continent with a new status effect that's basically super poison.
Yep.
I mean, Dark Souls also had super poison.
Okay. What
They're
about
doubling and
Poison
tripling
had,
down?
What if Poison had the traits of the bleed status effect too?
Scarlet Rot.
Yeah, Scarlet Rot. If your Scarlet Rot meter fills up, not only do you get poisoned, but you also take the bleed style huge chunk of damage. It's
Frenzy also has made a comeback.
Oh boy!
Everybody's favorite status.
I learned
Frenzy.
a spell where I could shoot.
Oh, you got that one?
I could shoot spirals of fire from my eyeballs that cause
frenzy.
frenzy.
Yeah. It is actually
I love
maybe
Dragon Ball.
my favorite pyromancy in the game so far. Yeah, just like
one thing I have been interested in, which I haven't heard much talk about, is do you detect much George R.R. Martin in this, or was he mostly cashing a check?
I think when you go to when I go to the hub area and I see the main visual set piece of the hub area,
yeah, that feels
like
very.
To me, I go, hi George R. R. Martin.
I mean, is it the tree?
No,
like the tree's been in all the
is
trailers.
It's hard to tell because like I mean I can't claim to be the biggest George R. R. Martin scholar or fan.
Same,
I don't
same
really
here.
know like his, what are the marks of his style, beyond what many of us have seen from Game of Thrones, but it's not Game of Thrones. I mean, I could say that for sure. Like it's not that tone, it's not that vibe. I don't know. Like it's hard to tell. Like in a lot of ways, this just feels like what Miyazaki has always been good at with fantasy. Like it's just there's that melancholic tone that permeates his fantasy stories.
I mean, those stories are always about like an end of an age, a kingdom dying, a sort of teetering on the edge of calamity.
Like,
that's pretty much a house style.
Right, like this is not to spoil anything because this is literally, the opening movie of the game, but like the game takes place in a world where someone or something has attacked and dethroned God, like it's
shattered the Elden Ring.
Exactly. Like,
oh, I love Demon's Souls.
But I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like maybe if I meet more characters, I could get a vibe for like, oh, this one feels like a George R. R. Martin character. But honestly, I don't want to be as dismissive as just saying he cashed a check.
Right.
Like,
it's very difficult to tell.
Yeah. Like, and if George R. R. Martin himself is not going to like come out and say like, how involved he was, then it's really.
I mean, he's a professional, like he
Yeah.
won't talk about it unless they talk about it.
Right. He's not going to go out there claiming stolen valor or whatever.
And I mean, like, he seems excited about the game. He has been promoting it. He has been talking it up.
Yeah,
so
it
clearly,
like,
he is still on good terms with the team.
It seems like he enjoyed like collaborating with Miyazaki. So it seems like that was a fruitful collaboration. How much of that shows in the game itself? Maybe later in the game. It's hard to tell, right? Like
maybe he took
Maybe
he took Miyazaki out to an American football game or something.
The thing I've heard from interviews is most of that like George Martin worked on broadly like the history of the world and some of the like major characters, and then handed it off basically.
I can believe that.
I mean, he's not a games developer,
right?
So
this ain't no having a mouth and I must scream computer game.
I'll just add as someone who hasn't really played any Souls games in the past, I have
What
tried.
do you think of this?
Uh-huh.
Am I actually more experienced in Souls games than you at this point, Joe?
Oh, I've never
think he
played
definitely
any
is,
of
right?
them
So
more
you-
than like
Right.
You've beat Dark Souls and Bloodborne. So.
Yeah.
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 I've never. So I've
2
attempted
out
to
of 5.
play a couple of them, like Demon Souls. I tried to play Dark Souls 1 and
That game has a
Bloodborne.
rough start. To be
And
fair.
every time I was just like, like I can kind of see the appeal, but I just don't have the patience for this. And I've now played Elden Ring in the past 3 days more than any of those combined.
Right.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like, I don't know if it's maybe just like and maybe people will skewer me for saying this, the execution of this feels like everything coming together now for me on it.
I mean, I
I can
think
understand that.
there's been quite a lot of talk about how the more open design, perhaps, intentionally or not, makes it a little bit more user friendly because you can just walk away
yeah,
from a
so
problem.
that's definitely a big factor, because if I do run into a boss that I can't beat right now, or I just don't feel like dealing with it, I'm like,
Joe,
all right, I can
like,
come back to this.
we both went to that like big ramp dungeon under the tutorial zone.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Just got immediately
Oh,
destroyed.
I still haven't done that yet.
Yeah, there's a part, and you have to do something to unlock it. But if you go back to the starting area, there's this whole horrible thing you go through where you got to dodge
Fucking
this
obstacle
like
course, yeah.
you got to dodge this giant rolling death wheel thing
That's
down
great.
several ramps.
Yep, sure.
And
That
I made
sounds
it all the way
familiar.
down there, and the boss just kicked my ass. Did not even have
Yeah.
Destroyed
remotely a
me
chance.
instantly, yeah.
Did not even
That's good.
remotely have a chance of beating it. I'm like, but I was like, I don't want to walk. There was no there's no whatever they call the bonfires.
Right, it's
here,
only a stake America. There's no
there's no
side of
grace down
grace.
there. So like you'd have to like go through the death wheel thing again to get back down there.
Oh.
So
Yep.
I think me and Ira were banging
how
our
that
head against
works.
that for like as long as we could before it was like, oh, we just can't beat this boss. But
I mean,
See,
that's
the
thing,
point-
right? Like,
I
the
think
point
that's
is though,
really-
like I can go somewhere else now and do
Right.
something else
Because-
and do a lot of other
like,
things.
I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that like the opening part of those games is by far of all of those games is by far and away the most difficult part of
when you
them.
don't have any tools
Yeah,
to deal with
and
things,
like I made 3 attempts to start Bloodborne and I think 5 attempts to start Dark Souls before I actually got on the
Finally-
run that I
finally
finished
stuck.
them. So
Yeah.
yeah, and like I bought Bloodborne, I gave it, I tried, I waited 6 months, tried again, and then waited a year, and then finally managed it. But
There's, like,
if they can
there's-
ease that ramp,
there's definitely an aspect of like there's always a buy-in for From games of like
right?
you kind of have to like hit that like the way I would describe it right is like whatever the first From game you beat like or just play significantly, right? Like more than like a few hours of it's like there's always like that moment where it clicks where you like kind of get it, right? Like it's not like necessarily like a guaranteed moment. There's never like an obvious place where it happens. It differs from player to player, but there's always that moment where the mechanics come together, the experience comes together, like, and it clicks. You go,
Yes.
this is my
Yep.
favorite thing now.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting there. I will point out, in between me attempting to play the other games, I did play Remnant, which is obviously not from software, but it's very
yes.
heavily influenced by
right? It is
the Souls
part
games.
of the burgeoning genre.
And I really love that game, and obviously it's very different because there's like guns and stuff. But I think that maybe got me a little ready for it in a way of like
Right.
kind
I
of
see
getting
that.
me in the mood for that. Even though they are different games, a lot of the concepts and
Right, the framework is very similar.
I will
Yeah.
say as well that even compared, like, again, I have not played Elden Ring, so I cannot speak to it, but like even if you compare Bloodborne to Dark Souls, like there are tangible ways in which the basic game experience has improved between those.
right.
And I suspect if they have made similar leaps in the games subsequent to that, Sekiro and Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, then perhaps that might take some of the edge off of it as well. So
You can jump now.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's crazy.
the addition of the jump has turned what is sometimes affectionately known as from platforming segments from the most dreaded parts of the game
Oh,
They are
trust me,
so
though.
bad.
to
they're-
merely an annoyance.
They're still in there.
Oh, I know. Of course they will, but at least now
I've been
like,
to one.
but,
Yeah.
like, you know,
And you have a double jumping horse.
yeah, and the horse can double jump, and it's boy, let me tell you, that has saved me a couple times where I realized I took a wrong angle on a jump, and
Yep.
I needed to quickly course correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm very much enjoying it as somebody who has not previously enjoyed Souls games, so maybe that says something. But and you guys as people who have played Souls games are enjoying it, so maybe it's a win-win for everybody. But
I mean, it's not for me because while you guys are playing that, I'm playing Dark Souls 2, for Christ's sake.
Oh well, that's on you.
Yeah,
I
it is
can't
on
help
me.
you
Look,
there.
as someone who beat Dark Souls 2, there are things that are interesting about that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm
Asterisk.
sticking with it. But yeah, I'm jealous. Put it that way.
Fair enough.
You'll get there. But all right.
All right.
Let's move on to a couple other news items I wanted to mention before we get to our regularly scheduled anime. We've been joking the past couple of episodes how the universe has cosmically seen Iroh and has been
Finally.
resurrecting his
My time is
cult
here.
favorite
Your
media
stars have
properties
aligned.
here. We started with
Turns out I've got good taste.
Hell
we
yes.
we
Biscuit
started
Hammer.
with
Biscuit
Lucifer
Hammer.
and the Biscuit Hammer
Yes.
getting an anime announcement. Last time we talked about
Live
Alive, the game getting
the
a
full remake.
remake, and this episode we have
It's a bit smaller scale, but it's appreciated. It was announced by Seven Seas that they are bringing over the Yokohama Kaidashi Kikou manga to the West.
Yeah, we're getting even deeper into Iroh's
highly
like,
respected.
So, This is
really
the first
big
time,
announcement.
right? This is the first
Yes.
official translation ever.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Highly respected sci-fi manga that ran
Yeah.
for quite a
why,
while.
why don't you give us a brief synopsis of what it's about?
It's I suppose you could call it a post-apocalyptic.
It's sort of a soft post-apocalyptic
Yeah,
story of like,
post-apocalypse. Like it's not. It ain't no Fallout. Like you don't got bands of bandits or anything.
Kenshiro's not out here
It's-
fighting dudes.
It's more like, if we fast forwarded 200 years or something, like climate change will have ruined the ecosystem, and but people
are
still
just
just hang
living their
out. People just
lives.
live. Yeah.
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 To me, at least, it was a very early example of the like healing genre that I had experienced. I'd like not seen anything like this before when I
Right.
read the manga, where it's just like slice of
I mean,
life.
it is-
right.
Yeah, it is more of like a slice of life type of thing. So when we
Mhm.
say post-apocalypse, it's not like
Right, I
3D
think-
survival.
I think the
It's-
thing we want to emphasize here, right, is that
Right.
the premise, but
right.
it is being used to tell a different type of story than
Yes.
what you normally expect.
It's
All-
about a robot girl who runs a cafe, and like a coffee
One
shop.
day she has to go and find the Elden Ring.
No, but she hangs out. She runs a cafe, and sometimes she goes to Yokohama to buy coffee beans, and sometimes she does other things. And it's just a lot of hanging out. And since she's a robot, she is effectively immortal compared to the humans, at least. And so there's definitely a large motif of
Sadness
she
of
will be
immortality.
not quite that, but not quite the oh no, I'm immortal and we'll watch everything die, but a little bit of the like I'm here and watching the decline of humanity, and
Right.
watching the kids grow up, and my cool old neighbor will die one day, and I'm just gonna keep running my cafe.
Yeah.
Right, there is definitely like an aspect of YKK that is about sort of yes the the perpetual passing of time, right? And,
Yeah.
and especially with the story and its premise, right? And to make it clear, like we say, like even post-apocalypse, right? Like it's not a desert wasteland, right? It's like the world is
It's more
actually
like flooding. Yeah.
Yeah, it's flooded. There's still aspects of it that are quite lush, right? Like
Yes.
it's more like when I think when we say like post-apocalypse or even post-apocalypse, it is more in the sense of maybe it's not even apocalypse. It is post-humanity, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like-
I mean, humans still around, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, I guess it is.
The,
why
the
Civilization is clearly on the downwards.
right. The,
Yes.
the structures that we currently see are no longer here, right? Like that
Right.
kind of thing.
But also, it's not. I would not call it a downer. In any
Right,
way.
like there's a tranquility to it, as opposed to like
It is a series where, for example, they will climb up to a hill, and as the sun sets, and the ocean will light up with all of the old buildings that have been long since covered by water, but still attached to the grid, will all light up, and it is presented as a moment of natural beauty of the current world, rather than as a somber moment.
I feel like there has been a rise in popularity of this kind of story
I definitely think so. Like,
over the past couple years. So like now it's kind of a good. Maybe that's why it's getting
Maybe.
licensed now.
I'm not the one to
But-
write this paper, but like I think there's definitely something to be said about like YKK's like influence on like how people grapple with like apocalyptic fiction and how it is portrayed. You know,
Yeah.
because often apocalyptic fiction, especially in the West, is portrayed from the like status quo minded aspect of the apocalypse is bad because we must return to the society that the viewer is familiar with, right? Like, you know, an apocalypse is bad because it is different from what you, the reader or viewer, knows of, right? Whereas I think YKK and fiction that was inspired by it almost begin to approach this sort of like reconciliatory tone towards apocalypse or great upheavals in human society, right? Of like, yes, like things have changed, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse, but like there's still meaning to it, and there's still beauty and substance to be found in a changed world.
Also, just stories where the characters can sit there and not say anything and look at the scenery, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
that's a very popular genre right
I think
now.
it was one of the first like manga I read that was outside of the shonen battle
Right.
sphere, I would say, and so I consider it personally to be
It's a really cool manga, and it's cool that it's finally getting like licensed here in the West.
And I
so-
think it is, you know, I think it is a cult favorite. You know,
Yes.
I saw quite a lot of widespread rejoicing on social media from this, and that's because, you know, we're deep in the anime hole, and we know people who, you know, who would know what that thing was. But like, I think, you know, it is not so cult as to be unknown, and I
Sure,
think
yes.
that this hopefully will be a successful release.
I mean, hell,
just-
like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jill.
No, go ahead. Gee.
Oh,
go ahead.
no, I'm gonna segue to the next thing. So,
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna share one more thing here. I think one of my earliest memories of talking to you guys was back in the Japanator days when
Oh,
I made a
man.
post
Yeah.
about the.
I did make a post about this.
you did.
No, I made a
Oh.
post about like the best robot anime girls or something,
Oh.
and Iro commented that the main character of this should have been on
Shit.
the list.
That's
And I had
good.
no idea what he was talking about, but like, all right, I'll check that out. But yeah,
That's
I think
very
that's
good.
one of my earliest memories of
goodness.
talking with you guys. So
Boy.
R.I.P. Japanator. That thankfully that post is long gone.
Archive.org has it, I'm sure.
But yeah, it lives on in our hearts. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess gee, we're gonna say speaking of sad robots.
robots.
And
I mean, I'm not even like that's a joke, but I actually going to say in some ways I think there is a meaningful, like, tangible connection between what we just talked about and the next work we're about to talk about.
yeah. So I also kind of I feel like this is continuing the discussion we had last episode about Shenmue the animation, but since last episode we had the announcement of a NieR Automata anime.
Yo, Yoko Taro get paid.
Hope
Yeah,
so.
hopefully.
I hope
Give him the
he's
money.
getting paid from
I
this.
He's not.
He's all
we don't
about
have
that money after all.
we don't have any information about it. I think most of us feel like this is going to be bad, as most
Oh,
anime
yeah. It's
adaptations
gonna
of games.
I mean, especially about a game which is very like a lot of its best qualities are about how it is a game.
yes,
if that
like
makes
the
sense,
gameplay
you know.
is directly tied to the narrative of this. Like,
Right,
so
like-
there's literally no way you could recreate the exact experience in animated form.
It's what we keep saying about like games have a texture to them that serial non-interactive media can't really replicate, right? Like,
Yeah.
how is NieR Automata going? How is the NieR Automata anime going to handle the side quest where you race the robot? And once you beat him in a race 3 times, he realizes he has no reason to keep living and self-destructs.
That's just probably not going to be there, right? And then
Right,
without
and then-
that,
Right. How do you go and talk to the big Engels bot like
Right.
several times?
Who's called Engels, by the way.
Yes, that too. Yes.
Yeah.
and like there's enough plot, like main plot, to do like a straight just anime adaptation, but that would be like losing so
It would
much.
lose so much of
Yeah.
heart, right?
And also, like, I'm just gonna say it. The main plot of NieR Automata is fine, you know.
Yeah,
but
it's fine, but it's not the strongest
a masterpiece
point
of
of it.
storytelling.
I don't know.
Right.
I really.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
I
like-
think what
and
elevates it is how it like all of the side stuff ties back
Yes,
into the
it-
themes.
yes,
like
It is the texture of the world around it,
Yes.
you know. But like, I don't think that, and you know, so much of that is tied up in the multiple playthrough gimmick and all of that, you know.
Right? How's the anime gonna
And-
do that? Like,
Which is probably
some
gonna
endless 8 shit.
Yeah, they
like-
just do endless 8.
That is like my one like, I suspect that it's just gonna be a straightforward anime adaptation.
Yes.
But what if they
Yeah.
just went like full incomprehensible, like last episode of Evangelion style, like just pure
what
nonsense?
What was the joke people were making on Twitter when this first got announced that watching the last
Delete your Crunchyroll
episode
account,
of
yeah.
NieR Automata, the anime should delete your Crunchyroll account?
Yeah, right. I'd love that they did. I just love it if they did at least something weird, right?
Right.
Like,
I
and
feel like they
just-
have to at least try, right? Like,
I just don't know. Like this
I
is
don't know
again,
if it's
like,
gonna
this is-
happen.
like look at the World's Ends with You anime. I'm not like I mean I don't think those two are necessarily comparable, but they're both Square properties, right?
yeah, but I
And,
mean,
like-
like the World Ends with You was not famous for playing medium games in the
Right,
same
but
way.
I guess what I mean is like that. Square is probably it is a franchise owned by Square, and Square is like let's be real, like
Cheapskates.
yeah.
as weird and niche as NieR Automata may feel, it was a pretty big hit for them.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
multi-million selling NieR franchise.
God.
So like
Over 5 million copies sold.
I think this is just going to be a straightforward adaptation, and it's not.
I
gonna be that
think so
interesting.
too.
And because NieR Automata is such an action-heavy, like like thing, like it's probably not going to look great either. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the budget to like have 2B doing crazy flips and shit. So-
I mean, if they did do like an extremely well animated version of it, I might just watch it just for that, just
Yeah,
for
sure.
the
I mean,
cool factor.
like,
but
I'm not saying that like it shouldn't exist, but I think that the chances of it bringing something meaningfully new
Right.
to like the
It's-
story or the conversation around the story about NieR is minimal,
right.
you know. And it would require a high caliber staff, a high caliber writer, a good director. I think like the acid test will be to see if Yoko Taro himself is involved, because I don't want to do the whole fucking auteur thing where like only one person matters. But I think whether he's involved or not will be, a bellwether as to how seriously they are taking it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I will just restate here on the podcast that I think the only tangible benefit we get out of a NieR Automata anime is maybe some new tracks by Keiichi Okami.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take that.
I'll take it.
But also,
Because
NieR
even, like,
Automata had a
3D
lot of
tracks-
music. Like,
Yeah.
I ultimately think it's a similar conversation we had about Shenmue last episode, where some games especially have to be video games to work, and this is definitely one. Like, this is like near the top of my list of those kinds of games, and I'm not gonna have
I mean,
super high
it's-
expectations on this one.
in a way, it's funny because it is almost the exact opposite of Shenmue, because Shenmue is a game about nothing happening, whereas NieR Automata is a game about, is a game that is so much about being a video game. It is almost the opposite of Shenmue, whose
Right.
very stated intent was to be a video game that is basically real life, as in you grind out work for 8 hours a day driving forklifts, and then you.
But
go
the
home
general
and buy-
concept is the same. Of like, you need to do those things to have the
Yes.
full Shenmue
Yeah,
experience.
the
right?
interactivity is the point, and
Right.
without that, I'm not sure
It's
what's
not
left.
going to carry over as well. So
I would say that the only thing that could, genuinely raise my hopes for this is if it's some sort of anthology or side story.
It's not.
It's
I mean,
not.
I would
And
love
it's
that to
not,
be,
yeah,
but
like-
it's it's
didn't they show at least like one image that was just 2B and
It's just 2B.
9 and
It's
yeah.
just a piece of key art. It could be anything.
whatever, yeah.
You
You
know,
can put 2B
but
on top. You can put 2B on anything, and people will go, "Oh, I should
Yeah.
look at that."
except Soul Calibur 6.
Oof. They have been crossed
Worked for
over in
Final
like
Fantasy
virtually
14.
virtually every video game that has a crossover. They have appeared. So, all
They're
right.
going to be in that new Babylon's Fall game.
Sure.
Yes.
Oh my god, dude! I hate to bring this up, but you said the names.
Did you
guys
see that
the
terrible
trailer?
image?
Image? No. I was
Oh
gonna
no,
say-
just the image that's like, and here's our season 1 battle pass, and
Oh, no,
like
no,
on
no,
week
no.
3 there will be a drop of, and I was like, oh.
Okay, so I maybe they already took it down and uploaded a fixed version, but
Oh my.
so they uploaded a trailer for Babylon's Fall. I think the day Elden Ring came out, which is really funny.
The demo for
Um,
it came out the day Elden Ring came out.
And so the
Yeah.
trailer was very much the overview trailer of like these are the mechanics, right? And like these are the weapons you use, right? It's very funny because it does stuff like because it's introducing each class of weapon. So like it cuts to like a black screen with huge text superimposed of it, and like the dude saying swords. You know? It explains swords are a
souls
weapon
and
with which you can use to and. Okay, and so it's a bad looking trailer, and the gameplay and the game itself looks kind of bad in general. But like, what added to it is that the audio mix on the trailer was super bad.
Oh no.
So like, like the left or the right channel would just like intermittently mute and like cut out. Like I tested this with multiple headphones to make sure it wasn't just me. So like suddenly like the right side would just mute and you'd only hear audio from the left side.
I wonder
for,
if
like,
that's just the upload getting chewed up at some point.
for like 30
yeah.
seconds, and then it would like fix itself, and then it'd switch to the other ear. It was the trailer was just a perfect encapsulation of that game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and putting your demo out the day Elden Ring comes out in a game that is obviously not like Elden Ring, but if you squint and somebody doesn't know better, like
It is at least adjacent.
Look,
It's
I'm
like
just
third
saying,
person
like,
action game, right? Like
it sucks to be you if you're a third person action game releasing
Yeah.
Yes.
anytime in
I mean,
February
Elden
or
Ring
March.
Elden Ring even managed to crush Horizon, which is like a Sony first party exclusive with massive advertising behind it. So
I haven't heard anything about Horizon since Elden Ring came out. So yeah, it's
I have heard one or two things about Horizon and its plot. I don't know if any of you played Horizon Zero Dawn.
no, we didn't. Play
No,
I
Horizon.
did not, and
I-
I do still plan to. So.
I was spoiled on the twist for the first game, so
Okay.
Shall I just take my headphones off for a few
No,
seconds?
no, it's
No,
fine.
it's fine.
Eero could keep it vague. I should be able to pick up on what he's getting at if.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic we can don't have time to get into. But anyway, NieR anime probably gonna be
Yes.
bad, or
Yeah.
not.
And then
Uh,
the return of
I'd
another.
love
Yeah,
to be surprised.
one last thing that randomly came up
This
out of
one caught
nowhere.
me off guard.
Everybody remember Spice and Wolf?
Yeah,
That was
it was
yeah.
huge.
Hell yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a long
That was a big deal. At
People
least
loved
10 to
Spice and
15
Wolf.
years ago.
I love
and-
Spice and Wolf.
Spice and Wolf was one of the like early things I saw that was not just you know
Yeah.
boys
I think-
action.
Dragon Ball. Yeah.
I think for a lot of anime fans in our generation, I think Spice and Wolf definitely occupies a bit of that like spot of. Again, it's not to say it was the first, obviously, but I think for many anime fans, it was the first anime that exposed a lot of American anime fans to. Oh, this is what anime can be, right?
Right.
It doesn't just have to be beam blasts and shouting. It doesn't just have to be battle shonen. It can be
Yeah,
something
but-
a lot more sedate and tranquil. And
I will say, I also think that like it doesn't have to be melodrama. It doesn't have to be sad girls in snow or
right,
like
yes,
stuff that.
fair.
Well, like, this is an interesting kind of quirky thing about like economics, which is something you would never ever get a Western cartoon made about.
Right.
You know,
With a wolf girl explaining economics to you.
yeah.
Yes.
I do feel like it is one of the shows I remember that was kind of getting buzz around the time I was getting into anime. So about 2009, 2010-ish.
It is the anime from that time period in which you would see people with like forum signatures of Holo
Holo
or
the Wise
Horo,
Wolf.
Oh yeah.
or
Says,
you know, their avatar is a Holo, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
No, you see, there's a reason she doesn't wear any clothes, and
yeah, I feel like this is a bit of a broader point here. I feel like we've looped around enough where a lot of these anime that were big 10 to 15 years ago that are still living, you know, living in our mind don't get talked about anymore because just time has passed.
Just to give a brief synopsis so people aren't just like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Spice and Wolf is I guess
medieval economic saga.
Is a medieval economic story, or that makes it sound so dry.
This show would just gonna say this
also
show would
has...
absolutely be an isekai in this day and age.
Yes, it would have been isekai if it was made in 2022. Yes, it's about a human traveling merchant who traveled, and his traveling companion is I guess a wolf girl, a wolf spirit who has taken on a humanoid form, who travels with him, and they just sort of
solve
live their
problems
lives as
through
traveling
economics,
and, peddle their wares and talk about medieval economics.
Yep. And occasionally run into crises of economics and such.
With some light flirting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I mean, doesn't the light novel eventually? I heard that the anime didn't adapt, of course, but the light novel obviously ends with them marrying and putting out wolf kids, and as you do. But
well, that's why we're getting to season 3, right?
So wait, this is season 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought this was a reboot.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't.
Good question.
Is this going to be a Full Metal Panic 4 situation?
I feel
been 15 years since
I don't know if
season.
I don't know if the thing I read about it specified whether it was a reboot or not. But I think there's a lot of material to continue on with. So
right.
I'm fairly certain the only thing I read was new anime project, which could be anything, you know. Like it could be a movie, it could be an OVA, it could be, a new series, it could be a continuation.
I mean, they did have didn't they have a VR game or something a couple years ago?
I think so.
Sure, that sounds about right.
Totally, yeah.
That's the last time I remember hearing anything about Spice and Wolf, but
I think the real pertinent question we're all asking about the new Spice and Wolf anime is how will Holo sign her name this time around?
God.
Will we get justice for Corbo?
I remember the quote unquote controversy over this shit.
Yes.
Back
making
in the day.
references from 10 plus years
sorry,
ago here.
I'm an old man now, and that is the long-standing cultural legacy of Spice and Wolf in 2022 is the signature.
Christ.
All right.
I mean, back when I was deep in the figure world, Holo was definitely one of the prominent exponents of having a billion figures for a while.
She was top 10 or maybe even top 5 number of figures coming out during that time period. All right. Well, let's move on to our other anime that we've been watching.
Stuff we actually watched.
Wow. It took us 40 minutes.
Yeah, let's talk about the Orbital Children, which have you all finished it now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have not watched this, so I'll just turn it over to you guys, but how did that turn out?
So, can I start? Is it okay if I start?
Okay, sure.
I think that there is a really good character, bonding drama here, and I think that there's an interesting, potentially quite good, weird, metaphysical apocalypse story here, and they don't quite sit next to each other entirely comfortably, I think is my take on it.
I really think that Orbital Children in a lot of ways does not stick the landing. I kind of agree with you, Zig, I think there are two really interesting stories being told by the Orbital Children, and it sort of picks one of them to focus on in the last episode, and I think I don't think Mitsuo Iso picked the right one.
I think, I think I'm a little bit more generous than that. I think that part of the point of it is the evolution from a discrete character-based drama into these bigger ideas and these bigger sort of concepts, and I do appreciate a good weird sci-fi finale.
The Orbital Children, in its last episode, expects us to unironically accept the terms Science 2.0 and UN 3.
I'm not entirely sure that's entirely unironic, to be honest. I think that there's...
Did they because from what I remember, this starts out as a more hard sci-fi type of thing, and do they go in a different direction?
Not
They
necessarily.
don't, but it's more that there are elements that were always there in the story that become magnified and sort of become the most prominent aspect of the story by the end.
It becomes more of a meditation on, humanity and, what humanity needs to do to continue to exist, and
apparently that thing is, if we build our AI god and give it all of the information, it will fix our problems for us.
I think that's actually the exact opposite of what they try and say. I think that basically the idea basically the entire final episode is naked space floating and exposition, in the classic anime style, and I think that they're grappling with some interesting ideas. They're grappling with ideas about, the responsibility of humanity versus, the need to do what is right and should humanity continue to exist under the circumstances that it finds itself. The problem is they also try and anchor that through an emotional human connection, and I don't think that's the bit which works, unfortunately. I think that, like I said, there is a fundamental disconnect between this very high-minded 2001-ish exploration of humanity and AI and the slightly more basic but interesting human story that they were telling to begin with.
I think I was a lot more interested in the Orbital Children when all the stuff about the super AI god was used as
the backdrop,
as a backdrop to the human stories being told. Because just me being me, I really enjoyed when this was a story. It was a hard sci-fi survival story, right, about kids who are way out of their depth trying to survive a very tense situation. And interspersed through all of that are the talks about NASA. The character NASA was a really fascinating character to me because there's this idea of, here's a true believer in AI godhood, and how does that inform her behavior and what she says and how she acts. And then,
it definitely, I will say, I think it has a great moment where it does the thing where, you realise just a few seconds ahead of the show revealing it, oh, she's the mole, she's the one, she's the traitor.
Or even more than that she's a true believer in the most, clear sense of the word of, oh, no, she's not just someone who, talks about the poem of Seven. This is her gospel. And I guess I really liked all that parts because even that part, even NASA's true belief in the poem of Seven, is still more being used to inform how she acts and behaves in response to these real life problems and issues, right? But the last episode
manifests...
fully embraces the naked space flying aspect, I think is where it really began to kind of fall apart for me.
I think for me, I think that the ideas are interesting and provocative, like I said. I think part of the problem I found was that so much of the emotional crux of that finale is based on the relationship between Toya and Konoha, and we just haven't seen much of Konoha. Right. She is magical waifu number one.
She funnily enough, of all the anime we watched, who would have guessed the Orbital Children would be the one with the magical girl with the blessed bloodline, or the secret prototype thing.
Give some of these other shows some time, but we'll talk about that later.
But I think the problem is, what we're asked to believe is that the strength of that connection is strong enough, like
Right.
not only to convince, the second seven, latent AI god that humanity is worth saving, but also, to bring her back across,
Right.
the divide between
Except then
life
after
and death.
that, they explained that actually Seven saw all of this ahead of time too.
I
And was all
don't
part
necessarily
of its plan. So
like. I don't necessarily think that's a problem because like the concept of predestination in anime in stories is complex, and I don't necessarily think it devalues what we actually see. But the problem is, again, we get plenty of Toya. I think he's a really interesting character.
Yeah,
I think
no,
that the show treats him with the requisite level of seriousness, which alternates between
Like,
very and not much at all.
One of my absolute favorite moments in the whole show is when Toya witnesses NASA's reveal and is forced to come to terms with, oh god, that's all the stuff I was saying, but she actually means it. Like, I was just being kind of a shitty kid saying edgy stuff to get a reaction. Blah blah blah. Kill 30% of humanity. Oh, this is what it looks like when somebody legitimately believes this, and being forced to like come to terms with his actual real feelings about like mankind and society. And
it's like an internet troll meeting an actual terrorist.
Right. It's like, oh god, I was just saying this shit to get a reaction. I didn't actually think. People believe this.
I think my favourite Toya moment is where they badger him about where the name of the drone comes from, and he admits that it's called Darkness Killer, and it's just really funny. It's so good.
Like, what a fucking, like, because that's what I mean, right? Like, moments like that exist to help anchor him, right? Because initially he comes off as the kind of standoffish, an edgy kid who's clearly like going through some stuff, right? So he's saying outlandish things like kill humanity, but reveals like the name of his drone. Yeah.
I think the show is really good, however, at making him sympathetic to the audience from the beginning. It's very good at establishing that this is a put-on, that he's actually a deeply troubled person who is mostly like being shitty because A, he's 14, and B, like he has like a really complicated relationship with the idea of humanity, and like they've kind of kept him as this weird lab rat in space and all of that stuff.
Right.
I think the problem is we're told a lot about the connection he has with Konoha. The backstory makes it make sense that they would have a very intimate sibling-esque relationship, but we never see that. All their interaction is on a very technical nuts and bolts level, and it means that when the time comes for emotional weight to be put on that connection, it just goes.
It doesn't bear it, right? Yeah. Because this is one of those aspects where, looking in hindsight, realizing that the Orbital Children was like 2 movies, 1 movie, whatever it is. It's a 6-episode OVA, right? Yeah. Like it's not very long, and that's when you realize, these are where all these compromises start happening, right? Because like there's only so much screen time to go around for these characters, right? Like Mina's brother, the other kid.
Right.
I don't even remember what he does on that ship.
He's
like,
mostly
notable.
there for comic relief.
Right.
But,
like even Mina at least has like a tangible role on in the story. Like Konoha, like it's very little, right? It's one of the even Taiyo, right, is like.
I mean, he's arguably the second protagonist.
Right, but he also does just kind of settle into the like oldest kid in the group role, right?
Yes.
Like there's not
the
that
responsible
much more
one.
to it. Yeah, and.
Yeah. I think as well, like this is a stylistic choice, which I think hurts. But like, it took me a long time to establish that Konoha and Toya are meant to be the same age, because she looks like half his age, and that might seem like a minor nitpick, but it's so drastically like makes it difficult to believe the idea that they have a relationship as equals.
It changes their dynamic, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a tough. Sorry, go ahead.
No. You go first, please, G.
I think it's just a tough thing because, like, I really do like Mitsuo Iso's work. I described him last week or last podcast as, what if Mamoru Hosoda, like, read popular science, I guess,
and had perhaps a bit more of a sense of humor.
Right. Yes. Like he is but what I mean by that is there is certainly a arguably almost naive optimism to Mitsuo Iso's works that. like I've been telling Eero, right? It's like this dude worked on Char's counterattack, right? Like this dude.
There's you definitely see that as well
like
at some point.
He worked on an anime in which the collective psychic power of humanity came together in its most dire moment and helped push back an asteroid that would have exterminated the human race, right? Like, and you start to see aspects of that come out in Mitsuo Iso's other works about how much he, again, like I kind of brought up, like Mitsuo Iso is a dude who maybe unironically believes that like science and technology can save us, right?
Yeah,
that
absolutely, and that's a refreshing change. I think
it is. It's just it's hard to
and
hard to
I think,
accept that though, even if it's
2022.
Yeah,
it's really
I think as well it's important to emphasize some of like the perhaps less controversial qualities of this show. It looks fantastic. The character animation is exceptional. I love the design. I love the kind of like weird twitchy energy all the children have. I think the voice works great. I think it's very funny on occasion. I think that the hard sci-fi survival elements are great fun. They like effectively channel them into good character pieces and good opportunities for the kids to show, their mettle, so to speak.
We've kind of been dancing around the conclusion here, I think.
Do you want to get into that, Eero?
I mean,
yeah, sure, go for it.
Of just like the way that show ends is bizarrely optimistic. I don't know, like.
Right, like the idea that like a really
it's one thing that they escape, I guess. Like
the idea that a really popular Twitch stream could single-handedly topple the world's current government and lead to the establishment of a newer, more moral government is.
I mean, look, she had 100 million followers.
Yeah,
absurd.
It's silly, but I don't think it's like that stuff is kind of just a postscript. The practical, like. The clear finale of that show is like the philosophical message it is trying to bring.
Even so, and I haven't watched that, but
sure.
I feel like in this day and age, my taste for naive optimism is very low right now.
I don't think that this is a naive optimism. I think that the writers and Isoa and everyone ask the hard questions, and I think that there is.
I don't know that they do.
I think that it's just ultimately a more optimistic look at. It's a second chance show. I mean, the idea is that Seven spares humanity or 1/3 of humanity because it believes in the potential of humanity to outgrow its cradle, as they say. And, I think, is it a little naive? Maybe. I think there are much worse sins that a show can commit, It's certainly not my main issue with it, put it that way. But, again, I think we all have a slightly different approach to that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about this in comparison to, like, because I personally liked shows like I thought Planet With was good. I like Kami's work. And also I like Gundam, like Tomino Gundam shows, and I was thinking about like why I was bothered by the end of Orbital Children compared to, say, the end of Planet With, which is also a highly optimistic view of like people can change, and I think it is like the scale of it, where for example, at the end of Planet With or the like it is the individual characters who reach self-actualization, and that, seeing that these people, like this small group of people can change for the better, it gives you hope for the rest of humanity, as opposed to the Orbital Children just saying, and this event caused all of humanity to change for the better, period.
I think that might be a victim of the aforementioned limited time run, right? Like, you can't, if you have a limited amount of time, you can't necessarily get into the nuance of it.
I know,
mean,
but it's like the scale is just so big that
I would almost then argue that if you don't have the time, then maybe you shouldn't attempt.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really an excuse.
And I think that's a valid.
Dial in your execution.
I think that's a valid critique. Yes, absolutely.
All right.
We
do need to keep moving, but if you've got one more point here.
I think it's worth watching. I think it's interesting and fascinating.
Totally. I think it is. It is one of the most interesting things airing this season, without a doubt.
And it's only 6 episodes, right? So it's not like a huge.
Yeah, and it's
commitment.
on Netflix, so fairly low barrier to entry. But I think I enjoyed it a great deal despite its problems, and I think anybody who likes sci-fi anime should at least check it out.
For sure.
All right. Well,
Speaking
going
of Netflix,
in a different direction, I suppose. Here,
I don't know. I'd call this fairly hard sci-fi.
We're going from the highest of space to
my goodness.
the lowest of Florida.
You guys want to talk about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Oh,
we haven't
yeah,
talked
we
about
got
it
it.
in a couple episodes. Did you all finish what's out so far? Is that
Yes.
Yes.
okay?
Yes. 13 episodes.
So to recap, this is part 6. We were saying things have gotten quite bizarre living up to the
Dude.
title.
Part 6.
The
is fucking-
ending, the ending of this group of episodes might be the most crazy JoJo has
It's
ever
act-
been,
like,
and
yes.
that's really saying
No,
something.
no, this is without this is not exaggeration. This is not hyperbole. The usage of a Stan's ability in the final episode of this portion is the most fucking Iraqi thing I've ever seen out of JoJo. It's patently absurd in the way of you scream at it and yet you still go, well, I guess it could work like that.
So what happened exactly? Is it even
Alright.
something
So,
that can be explained
they
in audio?
Yeah, I'll do my best to explain it in a very short manner. Basically, Jolene has been trying to get to the prison courtyard to deliver a disc, a MacGuffin to the Speedwagon Foundation, which has sent a messenger to retrieve it. They have been attacked by a weird monkey dude who has the ability to create pockets of zero gravity
Yes.
and zero atmosphere.
His
with
stand
his
is called Jumping Jack Flash, by the way.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, he can shoot bolts from his hands.
Yes.
And basically, she has been helped by a dude called Weather Report and his stand Weather Report.
His name and his stand are the same. Yes.
Yes,
Sure.
who can create.
Can control weather.
He can control the weather. He's Storm.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what happens is Jolene makes it to the courtyard, but the baddie has gotten a prison guard there ahead of the time, and she's shot, and it looks like it's all over. He's gonna do her in, and then it starts raining frogs.
Yes.
Okay.
Not just any
Because-
frogs either. They are poisonous Amazon jungle frogs.
Yes,
Sure.
dark frogs.
I would expect no less.
And I think I actually kind of sort of called this in a prior podcast where I said, because this is JoJo, Araki will do something with the weather. Like, for example, the phrase "it's raining cats and dogs" is a real phrase in American parlance, and that therefore, yes. And he kind of does it here, where the narrator kicks it and explains that for a time period in Florida, like during, for a year or so, it was raining frogs and snakes.
It still
presumably-
happens occasionally.
Yes, having been picked up by a nearby hurricane, right? And thus, because they fell from the sky,
Counts as weather.
this constituted an act of weather, and thus the Stand Weather Report is able to make this effect happen.
Right. I think,
There is, however, no explanation as to why he can use poisonous Amazon trees.
Right.
No,
I think
because that's the thing,
the
it didn't-
clincher is that not that it just makes it rain frogs, but that you can choose what kind of frog.
And Weather Report is maybe the most JoJo has ever been of nuh-uh, if I believe that my stand can do this, then it can. Right, and that it gets at the thing that we all know about JoJo fights, in which the best JoJo fights are not necessarily just a clash of power and ability, but they're a clash of wills in terms of who believes in their stand more than the other, right?
Or
Essentially,
who can find the dodgiest cheat using their
Yes,
stand
exactly,
ability.
right? And that often who wins a stand fight is the one who never loses faith in their stand's ability, right? Is the one who's like, no, my stand can do this, thus I win. Thus breaking the willpower of their opponent.
But so this results in the entire finale of the last episode just
Yeah.
being this utterly surreal series of thousands of frogs raining down,
Yes.
and so you have all this bizarre related stuff happening, like Jolene creating a quilt of living frogs to protect herself from the poison, and like the bad guy is just like standing in a corner counting prime numbers because it helps him calm down, and it is just so
also
completely out
the
there.
people who do get hit by the poison dart frogs have the most like crazy
it looks like they're
portrayal of
melting,
poison dart frog poisoning.
Oh, and also whatever the frogs hit like melt, because that's the way poisonous frogs work.
Apparently.
Like, and it is just like it ascends into that very rare tier of JoJo like silliness where like it's not just that like silly things are happening, it's just that the entire world feels like it has gone totally off the rails, and it's wonderful.
And this is only the first 13 episodes. If Weather Report is doing this now, what is Weather Report's final use of Weather Report?
Oh, by the way, Weather Report also sleeps in a piano.
Yes. Also, he is one of those JoJo characters where you cannot tell if that's his hat or his hair.
Yeah, his hair looks like a bearskin hat, but it's his hair.
Is that his hair?
So, I don't know.
Or is that a hat?
Nobody knows.
And,
his eyebrows are the same color, so I'm inclined to believe it's hair, but...
Iro, what do you think?
I guess I am also floored by the ways in which Araki can just pull this shit out of his ass.
I should also point out, by the way, that the preceding fight in which they fight Jumpin' Jack Flash, who has the ability to give anything like to create a field of zero gravity, Araki seems to be under the belief that if you create a field of zero gravity, it also automatically becomes a vacuum. Because like apparently that just happens.
Sure.
And so like it's just like it is so far off the end of the craziness scale that it's sublime. It really is.
I'm really enjoying this. In fact, I think I'm enjoying this a lot more than Part 5. Like, I feel like...
I would agree.
Part 6 is like... Because I think Part 5 was like... I mean, Part 4 had weird stands, right? I mean, Part 4 was arguably the beginning of the weird stands. And then I think Part 5, like... I don't know, for some reason, its weird stands didn't work for me in the way that Part 6's weird stands are. I'm not, like, 100% sure why that's the case, but, like, I think
Part 5 occasionally got there, like the insane dance sequence on the boat.
Sure,
which,
yeah, definitely. But, I don't know, I think there's just an audacity to 6. I feel like in some ways it is because these characters, like, so unironically believe in their powers abilities, right? It's like Weather Report doesn't acknowledge this is weird. Weather Report is just like, I will use my stand to create weather. And it's damn.
He also used his stand previously to create spacesuits out of cloud. Which,
he used his stand to play a piano. Like,
yeah, it's already kind of on the edge of. I think as well, like I'm just. Because this is the first time I've had to talk about JoJo Part 5 as a whole, or at least the stuff we've seen so far, obviously.
Well, you mean 5 or 6?
6, sorry, 6. And I just I think that the setting and the premise is just so much more interesting. You know, to be trapped in this kind of weird prison full of grotesque crazies. You know, to have to solve this mystery, like
Floridians.
Yes, but
yes.
Like it's effectively like the basic plot of like the JoJo episode from part 3 onwards is, oh no, it's an enemy stand, how do we discover his weakness / ability / whatever, and this is just that stretched into like an entire show of that, you know, and I think it works so well. You know, I think it's got great characters. I think it is reliably totally bonkers, and I'm much more invested in it than Part 5, I think.
All right, so thumbs up on Part 6 then.
Yeah, looking forward.
Do we know when the next block is happening, or
no clue?
No idea.
A part of me assumed it would have been around the time in which one who hypothetically watched this portion of JoJo Weekly, they would have released a new batch by now, but
not yet.
No, not sure.
Ira, were you gonna add one more thing?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard you. I heard you chiming in there. So
I will say I do like once again with Pucci, the new obvious main filler of Part 6
right.
is that
I forgot about
you know he is doing the thing that made everybody love Kira Yoshikage, right? Of he is powerful, he is clearly powerful, but he is also still relatively mortal. Like, he struggles, and there are, these frogs nearly get him, right?
Yes.
Like,
He could not take. He is a clever villain who could not take our heroes on in a head-to-head fight, and so
yes.
he has to use subterfuge and agents, and
In the same way that Kira was nearly killed by a cat, Poochie was nearly killed by a frog.
And that's Jojo,
yes,
folks. All right, we need to keep moving.
Yes.
I'm going to take my moment to recap life with an ordinary guy who reincarnated into a total fantasy knockout, aka Fabiniku. I wanted to bring up a couple things I learned since we last talked. One, the OP. I kept thinking, hearing the OP, that this is not an appropriate OP for this show because it's like a middle-aged man passionately singing about something. I don't really know what the words are. So I looked it up, and the OP is by Yoshiki Fukuyama,
Mr. Firebomber.
Better known as Neko Basara from Across 7, lead singer of Firebomber, and I guess
did the
sometimes
the
associated with Jam Project.
Buso Rankin
But,
opening, the only good part about Buso Rankin.
Is that just going to become this dude's legacy of, like, he just gets attached to the OPs for, like, weirdly specific shows that
Because, like,
never...
I mean,
it's worked for every member of Jam Project, right?
Oh, come on. Kageyama has worked on, like, fucking Dragon Ball, alright?
All right, well,
Yeah, he's attached to a very specific type of show.
Putting Jam Project aside, like, it's like, from what I can tell, he doesn't put out a lot of stuff these days. It's just like so random.
He's not as much of a solo artist as some of the others.
Like this anime that, like, I don't know what possessed you to get this particular person to do the OP for this anime, because it does not really make sense at all. So I don't know if somebody called in a favor or somebody knew somebody or something, but I thought
it's probably someone called in a favor, right?
I thought that was pretty amusing. So if you check out the OP, I think you'll see what I'm talking about, where it's like weird that
it's
things are not lining up there.
I can confirm.
Yeah, but also I learned that the manga is actually created by a husband and wife team, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, interesting.
The husband does the art and the wife writes the story, and
maybe that's why it has an unusually holistic view of its female character.
Yeah, I think you can kind of tell. Not even just having the influence of a woman on the writing, but also like the main couple definitely has like married couple vibes to how they interact with each other. And it's like, all right, that makes a lot of sense. That kind of informs their dialogue and their relationship. I'm like, all right, that kind of makes sense.
So
also, it's just go ahead, G.
Oh, I was going to say, you say this recent batch of episodes have like kept up the good vibes, though.
Yes. So, yeah, it's definitely been business as usual with that. No real complaints on any of the potentially problematic bits.
Sure.
But more, people being dirtbags. I like that they've been doing like callbacks to previous episodes now that we're deeper into it. So we looped back around to the elf girl that they accidentally killed her god and made her eat it. And we find out that her life has been ruined since the last time we saw her, of course, and it's hilarious. And so they like begrudgingly team up to fight this like squid god thing, and he's like, they get the like dramatic, we'll put aside our differences to defeat this, whatever, and then you cut to the guy tying a rope around her and just basically throwing her into the lake as bait for the squid, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So
do they eat that god too?
Absolutely. They brutally murder and eat that thing.
I didn't realize this was a God Eater adaptation.
Yeah, there's a lot of killing gods in this thing in a comical way, but yeah, no, that continues to be fun. So let's talk about Sabikui Bisco.
Sure.
I feel like, guys, I hated the last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this show was like brought me back on board, and I was like, yeah. And then the latest episode happened, and I was like, what happened?
Like, oh no!
Easy come, easy go.
Let me just recap. We talked about last episode how it felt like the party was coming together, and like the actual format of the series where we're gonna go on these adventures from town to town.
Right.
You know, we're locked in. We had a couple decent episodes. We're feeling pretty good about it, and then they just decide to just really accelerate the main plot.
Yeah, in a frankly bizarre manner.
The show's pacing is all over the place.
Yeah, and they do. Maybe this is kind of what you're talking about with Orbital Children, Zig, where they kind of try to cash in on the character relationships without ever having the time to really like
Set them up.
establish them. So like in the latest episode, everyone's kind of falling over themselves to sacrifice themselves to save the other person, and it's supposed to be this like intense traumatic sequence of events because, you know, they've formed this close bond now or whatever.
But
We're only
let
on
me guess, it
episode
just
10, right?
right. It just kind of comes off as a comedic rush to die.
Right. It's
instead.
like, what if every member of the party had a martyr complex, but we had only just finished the first disc of this JRPG?
Yeah. It's like I'm going to literally poison you so that you can't go to this enemy base, that I can go by myself and sacrifice myself.
I did get some vibes from this a few episodes ago when the pink-haired girl, you know, meets with them and has her heartfelt like explanation of her backstory or whatever. And I remember thinking then, like, it's a little early for this level of emotional like attachment between these characters.
For some reason, the Tyrol episode actually kind of worked better for me. Maybe because, like, we already had the episode prior where she was antagonistic.
Right.
And so, like, the second time they run into her and she softens up a bit, I feel like...
Yeah, that worked a little bit better, but
it worked a little bit better because, like, because also you were working on the assumption, well, she'll join the party and then she'll settle into, like, a comfortable dynamic.
Right.
But then that didn't happen. So.
Didn't happen, right? Or at least not yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we know if this going to be 2 core or is this just 12? Do we know yet?
I think this is just 1 core, which makes it all the more.
Yeah, that's even more troubling because we're getting. I haven't wanted to say this, but we're getting toward the end of the season already here.
Yeah, sure are.
So, you know, they're kind of running out of time to clean this all up, and you know. This show was never even great to me at any point. Like it felt like it was moving in a good direction, like for a couple episodes, but like I don't know. If it were any other season, I would not. It's gone from I would watch this in a good season to I would not watch this in a good season.
This would have gotten a pass in I don't know, spring of 2021 or whatever.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So.
But.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a bit of a shame because I still really like the vibes of this show. I really, in theory, I like a lot of what it's doing. I do actually like that Milo and Bisco get along so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes.
You know, them falling over each other like is kind of like weird and annoying. But like the idea that these 2 dudes just really, really like each other. They're bros. I was like, that's nice. Like I can appreciate that. I can appreciate a dynamic where like. Because for me, the thing that I thought was going to be fun about the dynamic, right, especially if Tyrol and Pawu join, is like both Pawu and Tyrol have like weird antagonism towards Bisco and Milo, but Bisco and Milo are just like so fucking chill with each other that like it would create this like weird, interesting dynamic of like half the party is like here under like weird, tense circumstances, and the other half are just like, nah, bro, we're just going on adventures, and it's like, I thought that could have been really fun.
They could have done a lot with that, and then
they don't do anything with it.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it goes sometimes.
I'll keep watching.
But,
look on the bright side. At least so far, we've made it 8 episodes in, and Milo hasn't been revealed to be like, you know, the long lost genetic
but
progenitor
didn't they reveal that Bisco's blood is like the antidote or something?
Well, they just said mushroom keepers in general, right? So I assume it's like whatever the mushroom keepers. You know, at this point, I've just accepted that mushroom keepers are just this setting's version of witchers, of just like they've been like modified on the genetic level by their mushroom arts, their mushroommancy. I don't know.
Yeah, I still think that's gonna set up some kind of
maybe
traumatic sacrifice or something, because I don't know how many. It's not really clear like. How many other mushroom keepers are still left out there, right? Other than the old man,
right? And there seems to be one who's gone rogue and is actually causing problems.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be if this really is 12 episodes, then I think we're just screwed. But I feel like
it's that Sakugan feeling of you're
Yeah.
8 episodes into Sakugan and you realize, oh no,
Yeah.
this can't be salvaged. It's
We
too
haven't
I
late.
actually
feel-
done anything yet.
I feel like this could be building up to like a mid-series climax. But if we have to end the series, I mean, in 3 or 4 episodes or whatever, I'm not feeling
yeah,
confident
no.
about that. So, all right, let's talk about Ranking of Kings.
Milkshake Duck the anime.
Ooh, so okay, we had some very intense episodes the past couple of episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess before we get into, some of the good things, but there were some things that bothered me in one of these episodes before we even get to some things that bothered other people beyond that. But was it episode 19 was the first of the two, or was it
Let me
18?
confirm
I don't
that.
remember. We got
The latest episodes are 17 or
No,
18 and
no,
19. Yeah.
It's 18 and 19.
okay, so maybe it was 18 because I think it was the first episode that we had the Moranjo flashback, right?
Yes.
Right.
So I'll try to summarize briefly, but the flashback is to into Moranjo's past. Apparently, she was from this nation that was very advanced with magical powers, and they benevolently share their magical secrets with this, less advanced civilization. And that after the less advanced civilization, becomes their own advanced civilization, they repay them by turning on them and murdering them all because they are fundamentally as a people evil and deceitful and will
Craven
stab you in the back
to villainy.
and
Right, and-
this entire sequence just right away did not feel right to me and kind of bothered me because they very explicitly say it's the people that are bad. It's not like
right.
the government is bad or
And
like
by
Ask me
people
about
you
this.
mean like you don't mean a collection of people, you mean the race, basically.
Yes.
right?
yes,
There's-
basically that's kind of what
this
they're
this culture.
Yeah, it's definitely like kind of sat with me a little bit wrong because like Ranking of Kings up till now has been a show that is so much about like the power of empathy and
Right.
the ability to
Yeah.
like, understand the circumstances that lead to people performing
Right.
selfish and evil actions, right? I mean, this flashback is literally exists to explain why Moranjo became the person she
Right.
is.
Literally up till now, literally every single time the show has presented somebody as shady or evil or whatever, it has then gone on to explore the like deep-seated reasons why
right.
why they want to do
single
things
time,
and it's like and make them sympathetic.
yes, except for this flashback.
Yeah, which felt very out of place, like you said, with the themes that we've had up to now.
Right.
Which we're deep into it. This is episode
Yeah.
18 or
Yeah.
whatever. So right away that bothered me, and then I did want to mention there was an article that came out in ANN last week about resurfacing claims that this was an allegory for the Japanese colonization of Korea. And apparently these accusations came up in 2019 when this chapter of the manga came out. And it's resurfaced particularly, and I don't know if you guys read the article, but it resurfaced particularly with the anime because
Yeah, I did.
Right.
the background art they chose to depict this other civilization looked somewhat suspiciously close to actual photos of like pre-colonization Korea, and it certainly didn't do anything to dispel the claims that that's what
Yeah.
this allegory
Yeah. So this is one of those tough things of. So when it comes to allegory and when it comes to like, bias and portrayal of things, obviously creators are human, right? And creators make things informed by their experiences and knowledge of the world as a whole, right? And I don't want to go as far as say like, how do I put this? That seeing that says something about the reader or whatever, right? Like, but I don't know. It's a tough thing because, like, I guess I don't have enough context because I haven't read the manga.
I think
but, like,
I think what I'll just add, what makes it even tougher is the author himself is not claimed or denied.
I mean, the author wouldn't, right? I mean, surely the author is probably.
Well,
if it is true that the author was writing an allegory for Japanese-Korean relations, I mean, hopefully they would be prudent enough to not say that. But
I mean, we've seen crazier things. If he was really like the full-on like Japanese right-wing nationalist or whatever thing, then maybe he would. Maybe he would double down on something like that, or
maybe.
I don't know. And maybe the most generous thing might be that he's just not connected to those allegations or whatever, and just doesn't even know that that's a thing that people are saying. But point is, we have not heard any clarification on that from the author himself.
And I know that, like, it's a very different culture in Japan, and media has a very different relationship with creators and fans. I would really have hoped that he would have at least denied it.
I mean, that's kind of it doesn't help. Saying something like not saying anything at all is also in some ways saying things sometimes, right? And just like, it doesn't help. I don't know how much worse it makes it, but it doesn't help.
And again, I think, I think the lack of comment is possibly I don't necessarily want to say a cultural barrier, because that implies that I know something about Japanese media culture, and I really don't, but I think it's a possibility. But I feel like a strong denial could have taken a lot of... It would have gone a long way.
And to me, it's like... It's weird because, like we said, it doesn't fit with everything else that the show has been trying to say. So, like, I think for me, that's kind of the main... that's the weird thing, but also kind of the thing I'm looking at is like, well, what is Ranking Kings trying to tell us? And I don't think Ranking King was just trying to tell us that the colonization of Korea was justified or whatever. But I hate that we have to have that conversation.
It does suck for a show that is as like holistically good as Ranking of Kings to have something like this come up. It really is an unfortunate, like, kind of
because
cast on the show.
And otherwise, it's been like my favorite thing I've watched in the past couple of years. Like,
and I think it's
so good.
Honestly, like that is the tough thing about a work like this, right? Is, I mean, again, there is always going to be that, like, look, a lot of people really loved Dragon Quest's music.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
Like. You understand what I'm getting at here.
And I think, I think an important step in anybody's, in the maturation of anybody's relationship with media is the acceptance that sometimes good people make bad stuff and bad people make good stuff. Right. Like, I think that's an important step in media literacy.
And to me, a lot of times when you get, and there are levels to it. I'm not making any blanket statements here, but when you get creators that maybe have problematic point of views or whatever, one of the main things I am looking at is, okay, well, what is the work itself trying to say, and how much is that informing what we're doing?
And I guess
and again, there's levels to that, because certain things, like, if depending on what that stance is, then maybe I don't want anything to do with them. But
it's hard because, like, if this dude actually, hypothetically is like a right-wing nationalist piece of shit, he is also writing a story about the power of empathy and the power of love to overcome long-held resentments and hatred.
That just doesn't add up.
It's hard, right? It's hard to square those away because, like, I cannot look, maybe I'm a little, maybe it's like I'm trying to, like, shield myself here because I really like Ranking of Kings, but, like, I cannot look at even with these allegations, I can't retroactively look at Ranking of Kings and then suddenly be like, oh, actually those messages were, like,
right,
subversive and evil. Like, no, those messages are still as pure and holistic as they were even after discovering this.
That's
the
thing.
What makes, like, internalizing some of this difficult.
It doesn't seem like a case like Attack on Titan where, like, you can clearly see those themes are structured throughout the skeleton of the story.
Like, that is the actual point of the story. is, that allegory or those, themes that they're trying to do. Whereas this was part of, snuck into somebody's backstory, right? Like,
Right. And, it's hard to say whether people are afflicted by unconscious cultural bias,
That's actually something I kind of wanted to get into, right? Is that people write what they know. And again, I want to make this clear. I am not trying to, use this as a defense or a justification, but more that, again, creators are human and humans are imperfect. And often, when writers, I don't want to say take the easy way out, but when writers are sometimes working, when someone's creating a work, sometimes they will use the cultural shorthands that are immediately familiar with them.
I mean, you're creating a piece of mass media. At some point, you want to surf on the surface of media consciousness.
Like, think about, again, this is not to say, this is not a whataboutism. This is not trying to defend it. But, if you think about, a lot of works from, say, before the 2000s, how did you portray a primitive culture? Loinskins, spears, bones through the nose, face paint, right? And even if it was a fictional primitive culture, these are the things you did. And this is not to defend that or say that's acceptable, but often these are the cultural shorthands that these creators were familiar with. And so those are going to be the things that they rely on to establish a certain tone in a work.
Right. But those things,
it's a tough thing of how
those things evolve over time, though, right?
Yes.
And that's you gotta.
Of course, that is to say that if this is the case, then this just means the dude is insensitive and ignorant instead of actively bigoted, which is not necessarily a huge step up.
Right.
Okay, but and I think this should probably be the last thing because I think we've gone into it in quite a bit of depth. But the only thing, the thing I wanted to say, to sort of cap this off is the reason this is a problem is because it is a problem which has been occurring with fairly alarming regularity in the last 5-10 years. Quite a few purveyors of popular Japanese media, be they video games, manga, anime, music, whatever, there's definitely, it's a problem which keeps happening, and I think that preconditions us to be, to see the possibility again. And again, I don't even know the work, so I'm not qualified in any way to say whether this is an example or not. But we've seen an awful lot of smoke, and at some point, you just sort of automatically assume that means there's fire.
Yeah, I think for me, and I do want to just add one more thing when I was summarizing. I forgot to mention the part where not only did they get backstabbed, but now history is looking at them as the Ranjo's nation as the bad guys now, many years later, and that really starts to sound like the situation because that really seems to sound like the specific sort of nationalist right wing arguments you hear.
I definitely get that.
But I think for me at this stage, I mean I think it's vague enough where I'm willing to compartmentalize that, but I hate that now I'm on high alert. Yeah, now I'm on alert to start looking for these things, and I shouldn't have to do that in this story because it's so good.
No work is perfect. At the end of the day, it's that thing of
and
you become a fan of this medium, and
and I think I think something else that's worth pointing out is, again, not personally, but from everything you've said, it sounds like that this is just not a very good piece of writing in general. It seems clumsy
this flashback is weak.
It's weird that
it seems clumsy and broad in a way that the story has avoided.
It primarily exists to give an explanation for Miranjo's behavior and how she and Boss became so closely intertwined with each other. And it gets to that point. It's a means to an end. You get to that end. Yes, it's satisfying to watch Boss crunch people with his bare hands and stuff them into a bag, a bloody sack that he drags down the road. It's very satisfying, but also yes, it's a bit clumsy.
And I guess carrying that over to actual discussion on the episode, I really don't want them to 100% redeem Miranjo here.
I don't
Like,
know if it's possible
Yeah.
at this point. I guess is the thing.
Yeah, like as
she's
tragic
done a
as her
lot
backstory
of
is,
very bad
she
things,
has-
both in the
yes.
past and present, and like I feel like we're kind of heading in that direction, and I don't know.
We will see. We will see. Well,
Uh,
the four knights going fucking balls out in episode
Yes.
19 is really
That
fucking
was
cool,
cool.
though. Holy shit.
So everybody, everybody like almost dying, and our trip to the afterlife briefly to have some tearful
But
moments
that's the thing,
there.
right? We've been talking.
Was Inferno Cop there?
No, he might as well.
He
have
might have been,
Like,
yeah.
This is the thing that like fucking gets to me about all this is because we were just talking about all this stuff about our feelings about like the Mirage flashback, and then episode 19 hits you with Kage having that conversation with his mom,
Yeah.
which is like maybe one of the most fucking like heart-rending things I've watched in fiction in ages.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They just and it just reminds you, oh yes, we're also very good, and we're
Right, like
and again, it's why that doesn't line up. Like
yeah,
I
because
don't know. I don't know.
briefly, like episode 19 is about how everybody's getting killed, right? Like Oken is going on a rampage.
I
nobody's
can't
gonna
believe
stop him.
Boji actually gets stabbed.
Yeah, Boji gets fucking got. He gets stuck, straight up. And like they're in like what looks to be the afterlife, and then there's the river Styx, right? And Kage sees his mom on the other side of the river, so he's about to cross it. And he does the thing you expect in this kind of fiction of he remembers that there are people who are alive who still need him, and that as much as he wishes he could be reunited with his mother, as much as he wishes he could just forget all of the just harsh, painful trauma that he's endured his whole life and like just
Move on.
let it all go, he can't, because there are people who need him. There are people he loves, and he will continue to endure that pain and suffering for their sake. And it's a wonderful moment. It's
When he's like, I'm gonna.
unbelievable.
He's like, I'll see you, but I'll probably be an old man. I'm like, oh.
Right? It's like fucking. Oh man, it fucking got me good. I was
Oh.
Good.
Yeah. So I mean, and then we end like you said with the four knights making their.
right after Domus, Appius, Dorsch, and Bebin have just been fucking jobbing this whole fucking show. They finally get their shit together and fight as a unit, and it's the coolest fucking thing.
They've done a good job of making Oken like truly intimidating.
Right.
It's just everything else is so good. I hope this is just a blip on the radar and we keep moving on. But
oh man, it's yeah, just and you know what I love the most about episode 19 that really kind of like sets the tone is that it's not the heroes who have a power of friendship moment to power up. Oken powers up through the power of love and friendship.
it's
Right.
yes, somehow they've managed to, and it makes sense. Like somehow they
Makes
managed to pull that
complete
off.
sense. Like Oken is getting his ass beat by the four knights. He's cornered. He seems to be on the ropes. They seem to have finally got him, locked down. And then he's the one who has the flashback to the kind words that Despo once told him about why Oken will always be able to overcome his hardships.
Now we'll pay
And
these
Oken
kind
is the one
words
who
by
powers up.
brutally murdering these people and watching them die.
Right, like you have Despa giving this really heartwarming speech about how he'll never he'll never stop loving his brother, about how he'll always believe in his brother to be the better man. Interspersed over this montage of Oken just killing people
After he
Right.
just stabbed his brother.
Right,
Yeah.
his brother who was bleeding out on the ground over there, by the way.
Yeah.
Just what a good chilling moment that immediately sets the tone for why Oken is such a great villain.
So good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are kind of running out of time, but we can hit some of these backlog items real quick.
All right.
I did want to mention I have proceeded on to Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm trying to do 2 episodes a week, so I'm up to episode 4.
Nice.
I'll just say a couple. My main takeaway points are if the movie was Screaming Phoenix Killer doing nothing wrong, this is Shofukan doing everything wrong. and and only trust your fists. The police will never help you.
Yes.
That is
Thunderbolt Fantasy
Words to live
understands
by.
the shape of the universe because the first character that Thunderbolt Fantasy has ever introduced that resembles law enforcement is the most craven, corrupt piece of shit. Like maybe actually the most like amoral person. Like the thing that's crazy is most of the villains in Thunderbolt Fantasy are like either zealots or megalomaniacs.
Right.
Like they believe in their God-given right to dominate the world.
They're Bond villains. Like they have class and honor because, they're so certain of their victory.
Shokyo Ken is just a fucking
Asshole.
dick.
Like,
He's just a dirtbag.
Yep.
It's great.
I do like, and we started seeing this in the movie, where they're like, okay, after season 1, we know we can't just beat Shofukan and Rensetsu because they're too powerful.
Yes.
And we're kind of finding other ways to like subvert, to take them down in other ways. And I like the new characters. We've got the guy with the talking. I forget what you call that instrument.
Or
It's like
I don't actually know what
it's like a Chinese lute, but there's a name for it.
Yeah, I can't remember at the moment.
It's not an erhu, is it?
No, I'd like it's the thing I'd remember if I'd hear it, but it's like a Chinese lute that talks, which is fantastic. And then the sad monk guy. I don't know what his deal is yet, but
oh man,
he's been interesting. Yeah. So
Which one of them is TM Revolution?
Rofuyo, the bard. Yeah.
Okay.
He's
of course the bard is played by TM Revolution.
Right.
Revolution,
But
yes.
he doesn't actually voice the lute, right? Doesn't he? Or does he voice the human?
No, he plays the guy. He plays the guy. He plays
right, who rarely talks.
Yes. Look, TM Revolution is a very busy man.
Right. So he only has like a couple lines here and there. It's mostly the lute talking, but yeah.
Yes.
The lute, amazingly voiced by Nana Mizuki, but no.
Voiced by Katsuki Kanushi, I believe.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So Thunderbolt Fantasy still great.
Hell of a show. It is funny. Like you're in the portion of season 2 where like it very much does feel like now that they've revealed that Shofukan is Superman, now everybody's got fucking kryptonite in their back pocket.
Yep.
Like,
we got to do this.
Like,
yeah.
I brought my anti-Shofukan spray.
Poison my venomous scorpions and yeah. So,
It's a lot of fun though.
You guys have anything you want to mention on your Big O rewatch here? Anything cool happen?
Show will continues to just be cool.
Or
Yeah,
specifically cool, actually. There's probably lots of cool things happening, but
There's a
anything
lot of cool
specific you want
stuff.
to mention?
In terms of the last 2 episodes we just watched, which were, I believe,
Pianist
6 and 7.
episode and this underwater episode. Like,
Yes. So, episode 6, the Legacy of Amadeus, is it's just another solid, episodic adventure. Which I appreciate. The thing I'm beginning to realize watching stuff like Sabikui Bisco is like, man, I just want a show where a problem gets introduced in an episode
and then solved at the end of the episode.
Solves it by the end, right? Like just a nice self-contained adventure.
I feel like, and it's been a few years since I watched The Big O, but I feel like I don't remember so much the individual stories of that show as the vibe.
Yep.
That's a good way to put it.
The atmosphere, the just the general feeling of it.
Definitely. Like I've been telling Eero, like I have just truly come to love how much Big O is just like, okay, we have our premise, we have our setting. Roger Smith is Paradigm City's top negotiator. He solves crime. So now the writers are like, well, what's the crime? How can that crime be solved by a giant robot? And we'll work backwards from there.
Yep.
So
It definitely feels like the kind of show that could have like existed on afternoon American television for like 300 episodes at some point.
So like one of the episodes we watched is about a piano playing robot, because the plot line is literally that Roger Smith can't stand Dorothy's playing because she only plays one song. She only knows one song on the piano, and he hates it. And so he hits up his old friend, a robot playing android, to be like, hey, can you teach her like some new music, please? And this culminates eventually in a dude who looks like a fucking like a Mega Man villain.
Yeah.
Like if Mega Man fought Dracula. Like if Dracula was in the Mega Man universe, like that's
That
what he
has to
kinda
have
looks
happened
like.
at least once, right?
And like he's got a fucking sound cannon that can like obliterate stuff, and it's just a lot of fun. And then the episode after that is a kind of a pseudo bottle episode where like Roger and Angel, your sort of Fujiko Mine stand-in character, kind of get trapped underwater, and that episode is definitely kind of more just like a pure vibes one. It's kind of gets into a little bit of like Roger and Angel's like relationship and personalities, but I guess the most notable thing that I had completely forgotten, they play the OP in that episode,
right? And
like
for the battle,
yeah, and it's like the 8th episode.
Yeah,
that's
like,
a little early to.
I mean,
a little early to
like,
bring in your OP.
Got guards
7.
bust at the opening for battles all the
Right.
time.
And-
Like,
But I guess that's what makes it feel a lot of fun, right? It felt like an intentional callback to that era of super robot anime, but within this noir setting. So it's playing, it's fucking Queen's, the obvious Flash ripoff that is the OP, as Big O is like piston punching this robot to death. It's great. It's just good vibes. Yes.
I don't remember if I had Dorothy on my top anime robot girls list.
She better be.
I honestly I only remember I had Aigis as number 1. That's the
Oh
only one I
sure,
remember.
fair enough. Yeah.
So
Dorothy, the thing that's fun about Dorothy, I mean, it's not the most unique character trait, but she's just always got a good fucking line to take Roger down a peg. Like,
She's an
no matter
excellent
what.
straight woman.
Like she's just always got something to say to fucking bring him down when he gets too uppity.
right.
Um,
All right.
yeah.
Anything of note on Gunsword?
That show is tonally all over the place,
all
man.
over the place. Yeah, what the fuck?
There
man?
was we got to they show up at some like resort beach town, and
yes.
it's this wacky comedy
you got to the,
episode where
You got to the beach
these
episode.
2 losers keep chasing
you're-
them down.
You're Jesse and James, like loser
Right.
criminals who are like way out of
They're
their depth.
just in some stupid tricked out car, but they keep calling it a mech.
In armor?
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
"We'll get you with our armor," and it's just this car with like honky horns on the sides
Yes,
and
yes,
shit.
And so right, so
This
he keeps
whole
going like this, right? So
episode's like
so
5
Van
times.
and like Van never summons the robot, right? Because it's not in armor. He doesn't need to summon Dan or Thursday to fight it.
Fight on
It's
car.
still at the
Fucking car,
very
yeah.
end of the episode where it's revealed that the girl in the couple, the criminal couple, is the daughter of like a mob boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Van fights the mob boss, for reasons, and the mob boss is like, well, let me show you my armor. And Van gets kind of excited because, oh, finally, somebody in this episode actually has a giant robot.
Is it just another car?
It's just another car!
That's pretty good.
And the best thing about it is, so Van's iconic thing is that when he summons Dan Thursday, so he wears a big cowboy hat, a wide-brimmed cowboy hat with a ring in it, right? And when he summons Dan, what he does is he puts his finger in the ring, and he slides his hat 180 degrees.
Right, he rotates his
so
hat.
The ring, he rotates the hat, so like from one end to the other, right?
This dude
That's how
fucking
he-
Kaikatsu Zubat.
Yeah, kind of. So that's
Basically,
how he summons Dan and Thursday, right? So when the mob boss is like, it's time for you to face my armor, Van's like, finally, and puts his finger in the ring, slides it around, and then the car shows up, and they just reverse the animation.
Very good.
And that's
Slides
the
it back.
that's the
I
kind
will-
of thing you were not getting in Back Arrow.
Right,
and
yeah.
it's just like,
I kind of feel like the only thing I like more than that trope is the subsequent trope where it's revealed the car is in fact insanely powerful and has
Yes,
like a
that
nuclear
would-
bomb in it or
that would have
something.
been pretty good. But yes, Van is like, whatever, and just just effortlessly cuts the car down again. It's just like, so that's one episode of the 2 we watched.
And then meanwhile,
yes.
And Eero,
And then the next episode
what happened in
is
the
just
next
like
episode?
they. First of all, there's the cliffhanger because Van is searching for the man who killed his wife, the man with the
Yes,
claw, and so they're at some cafe at the beach town, and he's like, "Have you seen a man with a claw?" And the waiter's just like, "Oh yeah, he's eating lunch right over there." And they turn, and it's just a table where someone has left probably 30 seconds ago.
Yes.
And he's like, the man with the claw!
Right, he just going fucking sicko mode.
And then they just cut, and it's Screaming Phoenix Killer walking away.
Well, no, it's like, oh, he got on a boat, but of course, the beach town, and there's like 30 boats leaving.
Right, so he doesn't know which one to
anyway,
follow.
so yes, then the next episode is they got on a boat, and they get stranded on some resort island or something, and it's this extremely slow-paced, quiet, like.
Yes. They meet the Lord of the Manor, a man named Joe, who lives by himself and his servants on this remote island.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole episode is like this very tranquil like meditation on the nature of revenge, and like the idea of like the meaning of it, and like who does it exist to satisfy? And like the whole time Joe is like trying to be like, Van, I too once went on a quest for revenge.
Left me empty.
Yes, I may live in this luxurious mansion, but emotionally I'm dead inside. Are you sure? Are you sure that's what you want for yourself, Van? Until the end of the episode, where it reveals that Joe is actually an agent of the Claw and was purposely trying to erode Van's like will to fight.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it ends in a big robot fight again.
Yep, of course.
But it's
Completely
really
different tone than the previous episode.
It's just the show's all over. I mean, in the way that a lot of 2000s anime were, right? Of just like shotgun blast of just whatever the writers are in the mood to try writing this week.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just try it. It's a lot.
It's fun.
Sure.
Yeah. I think I largely prefer the comedic episodes to the serious episodes.
Right.
I think the serious episodes are maybe trying a little too hard in a way that is beyond Goro Taniguchi's depth. But boy, those funny. He's a funny dude. I always forget, because the man's known for stuff like Code Geass and stuff.
Even
like,
Code Geass had the we're making a giant pizza episode.
Yes.
Gotta catch the cat.
Yep.
Yeah, he is dude has a really solid knack for humor when he wants to.
Yeah. All right, and Zig, you added. Are you watching an old Kamen Rider?
We are. This is interesting. Iroh, Aqua, and I have been watching Kamen Rider Kuuga, which is the first Kamen Rider of the Heisei era. It premiered in the year 2000. And this is I've seen it before, for the record. And the interesting thing about this thing is that it is the show which effectively began the modern era of Kamen Rider, because before this there had not been a Kamen Rider TV show in 11 years.
Right, there was a big break, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. There were 3 made-for-TV movies, but and this thing is like, it's probably the closest thing in the entire Kamen Rider franchise to a true sacred cow. It is like universally beloved.
Right.
It is, the series which rescued Kamen Rider and brought it into the new age. It is. It definitely spawned the biggest star to emerge from the series, Joe Odagiri, who went on to become a legitimate movie star. And it's really interesting to go back and watch it again. And I think perhaps Iroh would have some more insightful things to say about it than I.
I mean, you're the one who knows more about it than I. But
right, but
that's new, right? So.
Right. That's why I am interested to hear your thoughts.
It's interesting, to be sure. It definitely feel like now Kamen Rider. My experience with Kamen Rider is all like glitzy power ups all over the place, jingles, very toyetic, and this Kuuga is definitely less so. It takes itself a lot more self-seriously, I would say. Like, not that he does not. There's still obviously toys. His weapons are like, here's this gun-shaped object that's made of plastic, and don't you want it, kids? You can pretend to shoot the baddies, but otherwise, it's kind of it's interesting to see, like, it's probably unfair of me to call more primitive stars, but
I think that's fair, at least from a technical standpoint.
right.
You could, I guess, you could see the. I mean, is it a case of where like you see how we got from here to where we are now, or
it's a lot less flashy, and I think in a lot of ways that can be good, but in other ways it's not as good.
Is it sort of the thing of like you can watch Kuuga and then you look at the other parts, the other ones you have seen, and say, "Oh, that's where this comes from," or like, oh, like that's like.
I guess so.
Is it, I mean, I guess I'm just curious, like if it's
I mean,
that sort of like foundational work.
I would say stylistically, it is much closer to being a Showa era
Yes.
show than a Heisei era show. You know,
Half of
not
the show
only
is
because
about
it was
the cops trying to
Yeah,
shoot the
it
monsters.
is-
So
a lot of it is a police procedural. People die by the bucket load. We are up to like 300 or 400 people dead, and we're only
I'm
about
curious
12
then,
episodes in.
If Kuuga is seen as like a sacred cow, how come they haven't like tried to go for that tone more often recently? Is it just like it's
Toys.
out of mode? It's not popular.
Didn't sell enough toys.
Yeah,
Right.
that's kind of it. Like,
Is it the thing of
they-
like fans loved Kuuga, but Kuuga didn't sell a lot of toys or something?
well, it's just that they found much more efficient ways to maximize their
Right,
return,
yeah.
if that makes sense. I mean, Kamen Rider was doing gacha shit years before gacha shit was popular in
Sure.
video games and stuff, you know. But also, like, it's worth pointing out that although he passed away quite early on in the production, this was the last show that had any input by Ishinomori
Oh, okay.
personally.
Wow.
He
I
he
didn't
helped.
know that actually.
Yeah, he helped. He wrote the basic concept and helped
makes a lot of
draft
sense.
some of the early episodes.
That's cool.
You know, there's a dedication to his memory before the first episode, and also I think, you know, it is deliberately a throwback because it was trying to play on people's nostalgia, right? Like, I would say in general it is much less kid focused. That is to say, it is still a children's show. It is absolutely still a show for children, but they are, you know, they are trying to leverage their history in
Right.
interesting ways, and also the production is just so much more basic than
There's a lot of handheld
than it
cameras.
subsequently became. Yeah, lots of shaky handheld cam, you know, some very rough CGI, and all that stuff. But it's very different. And like Iroh made this point, is that it's not necessarily that they were limited by what they could do, because Super Sentai was going on at the same time, and Super Sentai from that era has fantastically flashy choreography and crazy battles and shit like that, you know. But it's painfully earnest a lot of the time, you know. It is not. It doesn't really have any level of like the knowing self humor or camp value that a lot of Toku relies on, because, you know, a lot of Toku relies on the premise that it is inherently a completely ridiculous
Right.
thing, and you know it and we know it, and, you know, we're all kind of nodding and winking and playing along with the joke here. There's not a lot of that here, and
I think that's been the big barrier for me for Kuuga.
right.
So Ira, you're saying you prefer it to be more kind of, I guess, silly,
I think so on the broad.
flashy, maybe.
Yeah, with my childish attention span. I think something I've also run up against is like, now when the monster, obviously this is more kid showy, but now like when the monsters show up, they're kind of, you have the little episodic plots of, oh no, it's the monster this time, and here's how it's related to the stuff at hand, and we'll beat up the monster. And in Kuuga, it's like all the monsters are doing their own thing and literally don't speak Japanese, and so I assume it's playing a long game about their motivations and stuff, but it's like, I don't feel like the monsters have any relation to the plot other than there are monsters.
It's just
here.
a thing for the heroes to do
Yeah.
while they are.
And
going
instead,
about
we'll
Yeah.
have like
the normal
this
plot.
long plot about like Kuga's, you know, childhood teacher who, you know, inspired him, and sure, it's this interesting character piece about this teacher and all that, but like, I don't think it's
Not really why you're watching.
it doesn't have
watching
anything to
Kamen
do with
Rider 4.
anything else, right? Like, it's so self-contained,
Right.
and I'm like,
Okay.
what
Right,
are
and,
we doing this for? Like,
The thing I would say there is, I think, you know, I completely agree with you, and I think that is a weakness of the show. I think it is another reflection of the Showa era tendency of individual monsters to be disposable because they were working for some evil organization, which was
Right.
always, you know, it's never like, you never have Kamen Rider versus, you know, so and so. It is always Shocker or,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, the Government of Darkness or whatever, you know, and I think, you know, going back to it, I still enjoy it a great deal, but it is fascinating to watch from kind of like a historical perspective as well, and
Right.
I think that is perhaps the most value I'm getting out of this rewatch. So I think we're going to continue and see where it takes us. I mean, I know, obviously, but I'm interested to see where it takes me in terms of my feelings about the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like, at the very least, is a historical
Yes.
reference watching might be interesting, but yeah.
There is also one extremely disconcerting thing about it, is it because it was filmed in 2000, it was filmed in 30 frames per second interlaced video, which means that if you turn that into progressive scanned video, it's 60 frames per second. So it is very weird to see that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a little, it makes everything look that much cheaper, which is kind of a problem when everything looks cheap to begin with anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I'm enjoying going back. I hope IRO is getting something interesting out of it in terms of seeing it for the first time. You know, I think we'll continue.
All right. Well, that is the end of our list. We had so much to talk about here. Somehow we've managed this season where we had no anime. Every episode we've found plenty to talk about for sure.
We just
There's always
branch out a little bit.
something to ramble about.
I don't want to tell everybody now, but next episode will probably be the season preview for next season.
Oh boy.
Good.
We're there already, so stay tuned for that, everybody. Let's do our normal housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. You can like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
No fear, no pain.